Hi, my name is Abhishek Clifford and I want to talk to you today about how to specialise your college ministry programmes so that you can, one, get into more colleges, how you should speak when you ignite different colleges, and two, how you adapt your programme when you're in different sorts of colleges. For example, a law college is different, MSW college is different, speaking to journalists or medical students, nursing, pharmacy, dentist, Muslim college, engineering, science, girls, boys, masters or degree, Catholic, RSS or whatever. So it's taken us some time in Rescue to develop different syllabi. That means a different content. But the amazing thing is that 90%, maybe 80% of the content is the same, with the perhaps exception of Muslim and science colleges. Most of the colleges, it's 80% the same. Okay, so just that 10 to 20% difference will increase our effectiveness in getting access into colleges, and for many reasons. For example, heads of departments do not have to get permission from their principal if the seminar from an external person is within the syllabus. So if the head of department wants it, which many times happens, but he goes to the management, or they have to go to the management or principal for something outside the syllabus. So if it's inside the syllabus, they don't have to go to the higher authorities, and therefore it increases your chances of getting in. There are more than what we've got here, and I'm just going to start off today talking about law colleges. Before I do this verse that Paul talks about, he says, I become like all people. He didn't say I become a Jew. He said I become like a Jew, like someone without the law. So, we don't do the wrong practices of certain groups, but we can quote from their culture. Paul says, even your own poets have said. I think it was Acts 17 in Athens, I think so. And he said, your own poets have said. So we quote from their culture. And in that way, we can speak on certain issues. And in all programs, I will speak about worship, and I'll use the issue of Basawana and Wachana Sahitya. I'll show you that later. So that, in 95% of the colleges, I try all, as long as I'm not running out of time. In the middle, I will speak about overcoming pornography, praying, and how you pray is to directly to God, and not using God's PPT or God's JPEG. Rather than saying God's image or God's photo, which is direct, we go indirect so that people are open. And when we have a photo of Basawana and who taught Wachana Sahiti, they are off their guard. It's within the culture. Paul says, as your own poets have said. Now, the poets in Athens were also polytheists, like Basawana. But Paul still quoted him. Someone in their culture to be quoted doesn't have to be 100% perfect in doctrine to quote them. You're relating to some truth that's already there in their culture, even though they're not fully right. And this is so wise, and I've never had any problems. In the last 4 months, probably I've shared against idol worship to over 6,000 students. And I haven't had any problems, not once, by using the biblical 1 Corinthians 9, 20-22 strategy. Okay, that's just one example, but let's look at now the more subtle things about using the syllabus in these different colleges to gain access. Okay, if you're one of my students, there is an exam on all these topics, so a specialization exam. Okay, I'm going to start off with the second hardest, which is law. The first hardest is science colleges. But even that, science colleges you can absorb a little. So let's look at law first of all. So there are at least 9 areas of law, 8 on the screen. This is the only slide with small writing. The rest of the slides you'll be able to see. But if you go on our website, you can get this document, which gives this a lot clearer. But I'm going to go through these 9 laws, 8 on the screen, one by one. And so when you're doing a law college, you're still doing all the same topics. Okay, MTP porn, violent porn, rape, child porn, one lifetime sleeping partner, human trafficking, homosexuality, okay, and female feticide, abortion. You're doing all of these, but the way you introduce them is different, okay? And there's certain points at the beginning, the way you introduce them. And it's not that much to learn. You can easily do it, you can refine it. Because there's maximum in science and law, I will sometimes cut down on the other topics when I do that. Do like an hour of the normal things, such as like an hour program presentation. So just like we can do our whole normal topics in 1 hour, when you do law and science, you do the law and science, that takes an hour if you have a 2-hour program, and then do the hour version of your moral awareness program. Okay, so when I go through these slides, this is my normal Law College PowerPoint, so I'm not going to talk about the normal things and like how I introduce the team. I'm just going to go on to the extras for the law. So I will always start off in Law College by talking about the value of life of the unborn and the baby genocide, or speaking against medical termination of pregnancy. As most people know, the MTP Act of 1971 legalized certain forms of abortion. And for most of us, because we speak a lot about pro-life, we actually know about this law the most, but I'll go through it for the sake of newcomers to our teams. So almost 50 years ago, they legalized abortion. Who could do the abortion? An experienced gynecologist, where it could be done, a special licensed place that was very hygienic conditions, and what reasons and what timing was specified by the law. And basically there are 4 legalized reasons for abortion, and there are about 4 or 5 reasons why they legalized it, why they changed the law. And I will introduce this in a law college by talking about all of these and going through why I feel they're not credible today, or why there was wrong reasoning and inaccurate picture of what would happen in India. So first of all, why they legalized it. The main reason why they legalized it was because of concerns of the population. And if you think about it, in our programs for pro-life and in the College Against Abortion, we rarely have time to go into all these reasons. But that's where it's different. In a medical college and in a law college, I will go through these, okay, for gynecologists and for the lawyers. So everything in a law college is based on reason and wisdom. So other things can be decreased, like examples, videos, and reasoning is very important. And usually I will ask for 3 hours in a law college, and almost always I get it. We have a whole morning seminar, and after each 2 points, sometimes I have a discussion or debate, or at the end. If it's a very difficult college, at the end is better. So they're listening throughout, but sometimes it's too long. Okay, they were concerned about the population in India at the time of independence. The population was about 40 crore, and at the time of, they said that by the 80s and 90s, people will be starving to death. And today we know no one's starving to death because of lack of food in India. And so when we can ask the students, how many of you have missed breakfast? How many of you know anyone who's starved to death because there's not enough food in India? Now, poverty and malnutrition, because of it is a very real issue, but it's due, the lack of food is not due to there's not enough food in India. It's due to the fact that their dad's an alcoholic, there's systemic poverty, there's corruption. These are the top 3 issues: poverty, alcoholism or dysfunctional families, divorce, orphans, widows, and these are the injustice. These are the real reasons for people being malnutrition. The solution is not killing the babies. I always give the example, if you feel that you're concerned about the population and we can't cope with so many, please come forward now. I have a gun in my bag, and we will reduce the population in India today by one, by yours. Please volunteer if you'd like to come forward and reduce the population. No one ever comes forward. Everyone laughs. It's ridiculous to consider murder the solution for a large population. So no one wants to take their own life. They want to take the life of their baby. The next thing is that it seems that the Almighty, and I say this in every college, the Almighty was quite has no problem with an expanding population, because the very time we have an expanding, exponential growing population to the billions, at the same time we have increase in technology, and so we have the ability to drill down deeper, we have the ability to make pumps that pump water further, and so we can irrigate more land, we can produce more food, and there's enough food for even 2 billion or 200 crore people in India. I say in every college, you know, the science has, the population's increased, but technology is exponentially increased. It's not an issue. Their predictions did not come to pass, but instead we got a baby genocide, a Holocaust, and the guilt on our hands of wiping out en masse God's children with the immense consequences that are coming. This is by the way, this is more a gospel point, that in every college I speak eschatology or end times. In every college I say, you know, if you were God and they were killing 16 million of your children every year, if you were God, wouldn't you want to, you know, take action to show them that something's wrong? And I say that's why we can expect epidemics, and we can expect economic collapse. We can expect terrorism and world wars. We can expect, in the middle of metropolitan cities, volcanoes to go off where no one was expecting. We can expect earthquakes where there isn't even a fault line changing the shape of nations in our generation. This will happen. It will happen soon. So that's how we can link, when I talk about the methods of abortion, I will bring that in every college, but that's a gospel point. We have another video on that. Okay, so the second reason why they legalized was because so thousands of girls were getting killed every year by backstreet, unhygienic abortions. I said again, backstreet, illegal, unhygienic abortions. They thought if we legalize it, the abortion could occur in the main hospitals where they have sterilized good equipment, so less girls will die. And certainly, they are much more hygienic now than they used to be. And so we are saving life in that sense. However, there's one thing we need to consider. Today, some years ago, the All India Institute of Medical Science published a report, I think it was 2012, in conjunction with the government of India, to say how many ladies are dying of abortion per year. And it is 20,000 per year. In other words, before we legalized, there was thousands of girls dying. And having more hygienic abortions does increase the percentage chance of surviving an abortion a lot. However, the exponential increase in the demand for abortion has outweighed the advantages of legalizing it. We've had from thousands to tens of thousands. I always quote that when Sawita from Hubli, who was in Ireland, they wouldn't give her an abortion immediately, and so they wanted to make sure that the mother was really at risk, and so they delayed. They eventually gave her an abortion, but the mother died, Sarita died, and India for months and months was all pointing at Ireland saying, Ireland, you should have abortions because Sarita died. So Ireland pointed back at India and said, India, you shouldn't have abortions. 20,000 Saritas are dying every year from abortion. You see, when they put the forceps inside the uterus, they may miss a limb of the baby, pulling it out and off, and they may cause internal bleeding. They may penetrate the walls of the uterus. There may be many complications which can occur, and that's one of the reasons why 20,000 mothers are dying. So what they do, they look at this and they say, we need even more abortions available, and they advertise abortion, and more ladies are inspired with promiscuity. We don't have to worry about it. Youths are inspired. Abortion is available, so we have no fear of getting pregnant. We can have an abortion, and abortion increases more than the number of healthy. The effects on the numbers are greater than the effects on the increase in hygiene. That's what we've seen happening. So it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all to do that. Okay. Another reason why they legalized, so first was the population, second was the health implications. We can see that both of those are invalid. The other one was the what we call the four reasons for legal abortion today. Let's just go through those. Now, one is to save the mother's life in the Act, 1971 Act. One is to, if it's severely mentally or physically handicapped. Another one is if the mother was raped. And now these are quite extreme things, but they are a tiny percentage. The total of those three is 2%. So, even if someone says we need these, well, let's deal with that later. That's a red herring, a smokescreen. People always use these three reasons, which are only 2%, to justify the 98%. So whenever I'm arguing in a law college, I'll say, okay, first of all, let's deal with the 98%. Okay, even if you believe in that, we're not even in rescue trying to change those. We're trying to change the fourth one. The fourth one is where everyone else comes in, failure of contraception. But it's failure of contraception for a married woman. It is illegal for an unmarried girl, apart from those three reasons, to have an abortion. So that needs to be really clear. And it's failure of contraception for a married woman. So youth abortion, when we go to the college, is totally legal as well as immoral. Now, so we are trying to change legally that last one, and also reduce the number of months. The timing is 3 months, okay? But then obviously, when we look at that, we look at the photos of the fetuses to say, this is 4 months, this is 3 months. Just under 3 months is clearly a human. It's clearly a human. From day one it's human, it's alive. From 3 weeks it's heart's beating, which we all know are fetal development, and we can put that in at that point. But what we're arguing is in the law it's 3 months. And that was perceived to be when it's the government saying it's human. But in practice, if they want to have a later term abortion, they just go to 2 gynecologists, get their reports. If they have 2 gynecologists, then the 2 gynecologists, if they agree, they're allowed to go up to 5 months. And they're trying now to increase it to 24 weeks or 6.5 months, 24 or 26 weeks. So the thing is that they argued that at 5 months, no baby at that time had been born viable. Now, viability is the age at which the fetus can come outside the womb, be put into an ICU, intensive care unit, and survive outside the womb. And the issue is, at that time it was 5 months, but now we have Amelia Sonia Taylor, who was 4 months and 3 weeks, 1 week before that limit, and she survived. So all the time, viability, the number of months at which a baby can come out and survive, and all the time that's decreasing with our increase in technology in hospitals and ICUs. So therefore, we can't have that as the condition, because that changes all the time. It's coming down all the time. So if that's the case, then we should say viability, and then we should keep changing it and reducing it. So no one would argue for a born baby to be killed, whatever the disease or circumstance. So the question is, once it's human, we can have no reason for terminating it while it's in the womb itself. But the thing is, with the photos, in our eyes, this is clearly human, but maybe an earlier fetus, maybe that doesn't look human to some people. But how can we say just by the looks of it whether it's human? We have to use a better scientific method. For example, the heartbeat at 3 weeks, which is before the mother knows she's pregnant. The brainwave detectable at not detectable, but the brainwave, it can be detected at 40 days, but controlling the movement of the limbs at 42 days. So these are more scientific methods, but even the DNA within 24 hours of conception is fully formed. So within 1 day. And obviously as believers, although we can't mention this it's not a good argument in a non-religious setting, but we can mention that if it's a RC, Roman Catholic, or PJP college, RSS college, we can say, well, how about the soul, the spirit? When does that enter? That's obviously the moment of conception, So, so going back to these laws, okay, so, let me go through those 3 legal reasons. And speaking against them, although our main aim is to stop the more general ones and to decrease. The main aim is to change the failure of contraception. Failure of contraception is such a mundane issue, and then to save the mother's life, or if there's a rape, or if it's a vegetable or mentally ill with no arms and legs, these are 2 extremes. How can they be put together? So basically, forget the first 3. Anyone can say failure of contraception. So this has to be changed. Removal law consciousness, we stress, and the age has to come down. This is what was realistic aim. Forget the 5 months, 3 months. That would save so many millions of babies, and that's a realistic goal. When we're talking about law, you have to realize you cannot make big leaps at once. Maybe a good law would be the heartbeat bill. If the baby's heartbeat can be detected, the baby's life should be protected. And 6 states in America tried to bring that in, and there's still a battle going on. And basically, though the heartbeat starts at 3 weeks, you can't hear it until around 2.5 months. I'm not exactly sure. But as the technology increases, it will go down. So to 2 months. Well, exactly. That's right. That's when his heart's beating. In every hospital and every medical textbook, if the heart stops beating permanently, it's clinically, medically, scientifically proven the life is gone. So by that same scientific law, if the heartbeat starts beating permanently, it proves that life has begun. So that would be a really good change in law. Okay, so we're not going to change everything overnight. That's unrealistic. So we take away the 4th reason, the failure of contraception, and we change the length. Rather than increasing from 5 to 6 months, we go from 5 months down to heartbeat, or 5 months down to viability. Both are decreasing, or 5 months to 3 months. Take out that extra if there's 2 gynecologists. Now let's go back to those 3 more understandable reasons which usually convince many people. Let's go in reverse order. So physically and mentally handicapped. Well, we know there are many good deaf music teachers, blind music teachers, apparently Beethoven was deaf, which is amazing. Look at the Paralympics. You can get loads of videos of Nick Leeson, who is man with no limbs. Just type in on YouTube, man with no limbs. Or people with one arm doing all the weight training at the gym. And when I was a young teenager, and the first time I was in a pro-life debate in my college, in my fellowship group, the first time there was next to me was a handicapped girl, and she was handicapped, and she was crying after the debate because everyone argued if it's handicapped you can abort it. And this has happened many times. 2 blind people that were in Viji's class, one of our colleagues' class, I think Gita's class, and Anita went, and other members met them, and everyone was arguing if it's handicapped we should have an abortion, but they were crying saying, so I have no right to live? To go up to a handicapped or blind or lame person and say, you have no right to live. If you can do that, then you can argue for abortion of a handicapped child, okay? But we have today many good charities and many good government organizations which look after handicapped children. So if the parents can't cope, how did World War II, the 2nd largest disaster in human history, how did that start? It started with Adolf Hitler saying we've got such a bad economy, we need to no longer look after the useless eaters. So he said, we don't want any all these hospitals for handicapped children or very old people. And so they said, well, what should we do? None of the relatives are there, no one wants to look after them. He said, terminate them. So the first killings that introduced World War II was called the useless eaters. And it was the handicapped children and the old age people in hospitals. So this is how death, now you can't say this in the college, but I'm explaining to you, this is how death entered. This is how evil began. This is how evil escalated that led to this huge 50 million people dying. And it's exactly the same as what's happened with abortion. People justify it with handicapped children, and they'll take the 1 in a million Siamese twins with 2 heads joined together, which we can operate on anyway, or which we can try and operate on. Let's not terminate them. And if we can't afford the operation, then we leave them. If they die because of their disease, that's in God's hands. We don't murder. We hold out for life. If your granddad or grandmum is dying, even if there's no chance for them, you will give them milkshake, you will give them something to drink, even though you know they're dying. You'll kiss them, you're cuddling. Those that have lost their parents or their dads, they understand this. It doesn't matter. Death is an enemy of humanity. We never want to encourage it, and we always fight against it. Everything in our own lives, we want survival. Okay, so that's handicapped. Now, how about rape cases? Well, going back to this little child here, if this child's dad was a rapist and raped its mum, then punish the rapist severely. Give him a bilateral orchidectomy. That means you cut off his sexual organs so that he can never rape someone again. If he's convicted of a double rape or part of a gang rape, that I think that punishment fits the crime. And but don't punish the baby. The baby's done nothing wrong. What's the baby done wrong? Okay, so yeah, I'm just thinking when I do the video on medical termination of pregnancy, all these things are common, so I won't include them again. This will be in that, when we're watching this will cover what I'll share with the doctors as well. And if you don't cover these things, it will come up in the debates. How about a rape case? How about handicapped? How about youths who are not married? Save the mother's life. Okay, so yes, the girl, every time she looks at that baby, will remember the rape. Okay, but she can give it for adoption. Adoption is the answer, not abortion. She doesn't have to look at it. And anyway, she's made a mistake. She's had a terrible thing happen to her when she's been raped. But something worse, something just as bad will happen to her. If she has an abortion, she increases the chances of infertility and breast cancer, which is another bad thing to her. Let's stop that bad thing from happening to her as well. Okay, so let me slow down a little bit in case you can't understand my accent, because there's lots of different people who are going to be viewing this. Let me slow down a bit. If you've struggled so far, let me go a little slower. Let's go to the number one, which is the to save a mother's life. Now, 3 days ago, I got a phone call from a journalist in Delhi, and this was one of her questions. The only question she asked me about abortion is this. So obviously, it's a smokescreen. They want to catch you out as being brutal. You want your wife to die to save this blob, which may not survive. Which may not survive. If the mother dies, the baby's going to die. Now, I do believe that there's a difference between abortion and when the baby's sick and it comes out by nature, miscarriage. Again, that's completely different. That's not induced by human beings. So an abortion, a miscarriage is different. And in the same way, if the baby is proven clinically dead, okay, if his heart stopped beating, which they can measure, it's proven clinically dead, removing that dead fetus, which is usually what happens in the earlier stage, that's not an abortion, it's already died. Okay, then the other thing is the big problems that can cause the problems to the health of the mother is usually late term, which is illegal anyway in many countries. or it's in the 4 to 5 month stage, when they can 5 or 6 month stage, when they can do a hysterotomy and put the baby inside the ICU, try and save the baby and try and save the mother. That's another option. Now, there may be a tiny thin margin in between where the mother's going to risk her life. Now, looking at the masses of abortion that's taking place, I can understand some believers would have the exception for that 1 in 10 million theoretical case to save the mother, where it's not really small, it's not really big, it's in that tiny slither in between where there's no chance of survival outside, and it's really life-threatening, and it hasn't already died, okay? Or it's not proven that it's dying. I mean, there's this tiny area, and I would understand people, pro-lifers, who would make a tiny exception for that 1 in 10 million, stressing that it's 1 in 10 million. Personally, still, I think there's other things. For us as believers, think of the cross. Jesus risked his life to save everyone. Say the original mother that said, we need to legalize abortion for you. She says, no. Even if I risk my life to save that baby, I'm going to stop 60 million deaths per year in India. So do you remember Adolf Hitler? When we changed the law, you see, it's the law. That if that woman dies, or if the young girl who goes to a backstreet abortion because we made abortion illegal, if she dies, we are saving 20,000 mothers per year, compared to the 2,000 that are putting the coat hangers inside, who are young girls. We are saving the 16 million babies, and the cost is less. We're saving 18,000 lives, and we're losing 2,000 girls in backstreet clinics. So in the same way, if a few mothers have to die, or a few students have to die, but en masse, girls are saved from this, and babies are saved, then in the overall aspect of things, which unbelievers find very hard to see, I'd still say no abortion, no exception. I wouldn't push that point in many colleges. I may make the point once. If they ask me the question, I'd come to that. I would give all the other arguments first, that it's only 0.1% to save the mother's life totally, and even out of that, as I said, there are other options, and it's rarely occurring. It's 1 in 1,000, and there's other options like hysterotomy, save the baby, save the mother. After 5 months, it's after 5 or 6 months, it's 90% survival rate in a good hospital of baby, and then mother's saved as well. So we don't want to open the gate of hell. If we open it with a crack, if we allow for this tiny 1 in a million, then another 500,000 more people will come through once we've allowed it. So again, I would say no abortion in any circumstance. Now, I would agree. If I was married and I had a wife, and there's a tiny blob inside a womb, that person, and my wife, I want to save her life. So I wouldn't blame even a Christian for making an exception. And in that position, that very rare thing, it's really hard because if you're not having an abortion, you're killing your wife. So you're killing someone. So I'm going to leave that there as the tiniest grey area in the remote possibility. Okay, so we've covered all the legal reasons for abortion. Another thing about abortion is we can see that from these 4 surveys, the Guttman New York recently, 60 million a year, the government of India and 3 other departments, including All India Institute of Medical Science, 11 million per year in 2012, 6.4. I forget the interpretation of those initials if you want to let me know. The Economist published that before legalization it was only 2.6 million. So we can see that during the internet era there's been exponential increase in the demand for abortion, and after legalization it has steadily increased. Now, of course, these are not exact, it could be a slight wobble, but we can clearly see a trend that it's increasing, and that it's increased even more rate when we are advertising promiscuity in the media, in the internet, day and night. Okay, so you do your normal program. In Australia, they have to see there's a law that came out that they have to see the fetal development, and they have to see the method of abortion before they can receive an abortion. They have to be given a choice. They have to be told the reality. So that would be a good law to introduce in India. And what we say is let it come in the syllabus so that everyone, so many people would stop being promiscuous if they just saw the reality of life and the truth that contraception is not 100%, it's average 83% in India today. They'd show the medical, the baby poison, the hysterotomy, not hysterectomy, hysterotomy. They'd show the D&C, D&E. We go through that in the MTP, how you do a medical college, in more detail. Okay, now 12%, according to all our research of 5,800 students, on average 12% of college girls get pregnant during their 3 years of college. Okay, 12%. That's 500,000 pregnancies per year in South India of college girls. 99.9%, that's just off the top of my head, go for the MTP. Some go to a life centre, and that's the solution. The solution is adoption, not abortion. But this is a huge issue. This youth abortion is illegal and it's unethical. And we estimate it's approximately, that comes out to 20% of the abortions overall. So 20% is due to youth pregnancies. Okay, going to PCPNDT. This law, as we learned at the National Pro-Life Christian Summit in 2016, PCPNDT Act of 1994, updated 2003, is preconception, prenatal diagnostic techniques. And basically it makes gender-based abortions illegal, or sex selection by the doctor is illegal. So according to the 2011 population census, there are now 20 million less girls compared to boys at primary school age, approximately actually 0 to 8 years is the actual area. So at primary school age, there are 20 million guys it will be impossible for all the guys to find wives. 20 million guys will never find a wife in India, okay? Unless one girl marries 2 guys, and that's not going to happen. Guys are not going to share their wife with someone else. It's not going to happen. Okay, present trends continue. It will go to 50 million. This is 2 crore now. It will go up to 5 crore if the trends continue. Okay, talk slower, Abhishek, so that you can understand the accent. Okay, so it's good to always mention this because this is an example of a law. They made that criminalised now. But what we see is that when we played God and we played with murder, we played with the execution of babies, we changed the laws, we caused a huge problem. We've already got a problem of rape and prostitution, demand and gang rapes and sexual abuse, when there's 20 million men who don't have a wife to satisfy themselves with. How much more are all these problems going to be confounded, exasperated, increased? And so again, it shows why we shouldn't have legalized abortion. Now, when we talk about female feticide, killing a child because it's a girl, everyone is concerned about the population shift. They're still not concerned about the barbaric method of abortion, the taking away of life. That's not their issue. The first episode of Satyameva Jayate, Amir Khan, his first episode was on this baby genocide of girls. But we need to point out, if it's a girl, it's totally wrong. If it's a guy, it's just as wrong. It's not because we can use the issue of PCPNDT to get social acceptance. If you're going to a debate, you're going to a medical college, you're going to a law college, you can use this issue because everyone understands that the population gender distribution is a terrible social evil, a real problem, has to be changed. That's our way in to if you can't speak directly about abortion, you can speak about this, and through this issue talk about the fetal development, the methods of abortion. Okay. Any questions on how we deal with medical issues in law colleges? Okay, so just like a recap, you go through the legal reasons, go through the law, go through why they legalized it, and talk about PC, PNDT, or female feticide. Okay, you talk about these laws. Then you do all your normal points about abortion. Okay, let's come to the next thing, which is pornography. So, in 2000, the IPC section 292 from the time of independence is against AC off, please. Is against pornography in analog form, like photos, etc. However, in the year 2000, they brought out the IT Act, which criminalizes the production and distribution of pornography in digital formats. It was in section 67A, section 67A. Section 67B goes one step further for child porn. It's even more illegal. I think even the viewing of child porn is illegal, because that was seen as something that encourages the en masse abduction of children. That's 67B. But so this act was updated in 2008, and because of this act, it enables NGOs like ours to conduct raids with the police on cyber cafes. In 2011, there was, but prior to that, in Mumbai, there were some law students. This shows how a law student can change the whole country. This shows how powerful the law lobby is. Now, politicians make the laws. Okay, so when we're talking in law colleges, they may say, we don't make the laws, so we just implement. That's not quite true, because politicians are advised by lawyers. And when they want to debate how to interpret the law, it goes through the Supreme Courts. So, how the interpretation law. So lawyers interpret the law, and lawyers have a lobby which campaigns to the MPs any law they want to change. The MPs on their own will not form a law. They will use the lawyers. Now, it's a special part of lawyers, not just your family lawyer, divorce lawyer, court case, but still, these lawyers are majorly involved, because they can write, even when they're in their degree and they're doing their masters, they will have to write an assignment, and it has to be published, and that will be in about a certain law being changed, what the politicians read, all the implications. So they get asked for their feedback. What are the legal implications? So it's very important that lawyers, for many reasons, we influence them with these things. But there was a couple of law students in Mumbai around the year 2004-05 who noticed that all their friends were getting addicted to watching rape and child porn, with the potential to inspire rape and paedophilia, and they were disgusted, with the behaviour of their classmates at PUC or +1, +2 level. So they filed a PIL, which is a public interest litigation, in the High Court in their state, Maharashtra. Now, the Supreme Court's PIL is for the nation, but the High Court is the top court in every state. Supreme Court, High Court. High Court is state-wise, Supreme Court is for the whole nation. So this PIL is free, and it's presented as a request to the top bench lawyers, and they will choose what one's really necessary each month. And it's a free thing, it's argued only by the lawyers, and so this one was selected, and they argued for tighter regulations of cyber cafes, and it got through, and it went through the High Court, and it was adopted for the whole nation. It's adopted for the whole nation, and it's called the 2011 Rules for Cyber Cafes. It was legislated in the 2008 amendment to the IT Act that they have to develop a law. So it was already there, and it was developed in the 2011, but the inspiration came from two law students. Whenever I do Ignite in a law college, I will always talk about this. Whenever I do Ignite in a law college, I will mention all these 8 recent changes of law, and I'll talk about what are the issues, how it connects the students, and what are the issues behind them in a quick 20-minute summary. I don't think I've ever had a reject. A couple of times it's perhaps been towards the end of when I've run out of time and God hasn't opened the door, but such a 80 to 90% acceptance in law colleges to do this when it's so in their syllabus. Okay, so what the result of these two law students petitioning this change was that all cyber cafes have to have public facing screens for children. So anyone under 18 cannot have a cubicle. And even the cubicles can only be 5 feet high, so that the person that owns or is invigilating or working in charge of that cyber cafe can make sure no children under 18 can go inside to do these activities. Recently we've seen even more of the cyber cafes have public facing screen. They seem to be tightening the law even more. But it's a bit late because now everyone's using mobile and free internet. And they have to have porn blocking software in every system, in every cyber cafe. This means the police have to cooperate with us. If we say this cyber cafe does not have porn blocking software, we can go in with the police, we can check it in front of them, show that the websites are coming, and they will not arrest, it's not a criminal offence, they will lose their license for that shop. Rescue has closed down 2 shops like this, and through our raids, and or was it one? Yeah, it was just one, wasn't it? In Belgium, one actually closed. The cyber cafes, many more. And then the second thing is that because this is illegal, we can go to the download centres where they're loading young people's chips with porn, and we've got about 20 people put in jail with all our raids together, 3 in Mysore and 2 in Belgium. Two shops in Belgium, and also after we did raids, other surrounding districts were inspired to do raids. Every cyber cafe was raided in Gadag after our work because this is in the law. Okay, so we can talk to the law students about how, because this is come in the law, the NGOs and the social workers and the activists can get the police cooperation. So the law is so important. Another thing generally about the law, when the law changes, it disciples a nation. So if you legalise homosexuality, you legalise all films on homosexuality. As soon as you legalise films, then people en masse accept it. You have an exponential increase, which is what we see in the Western countries today. So, for example, basically abortion was unacceptable in the West. It was socially unacceptable until they legalised it. When they legalised it, all the films could then, talk about it as doing the right thing. You can't look after this baby, you're not married, so you do the right thing. It's hard for you, but you've done the right thing. You've lost your baby, And once the law changes, it is a schoolmaster for the nation. So we have to be so careful when framing laws. We say to the law students, again, we're talking about how powerful law is. So it encourages them, and all their principals and lecturers feel very happy. Now, people, when they try to block we talk all our normal points about pornography, okay? But these are the other things we have to look at. When they first tried to block the internet porn in around 2014, for 4 days they blocked 853 porn websites, which we were delighted about after all our campaigns to do the same. At that time, for 4 days, it came in the media, and people argued that, this was our raid in Belgium, and we go through all our normal points on pornography. So people argued on the television, 1, you cannot block the porn, because there's so many websites, WhatsApp groups, it's impossible to block. Number 2, they said, people should have freedom. Who's the government to tell what we watch in private, what we do in our bedrooms? These were the 2 of the arguments. Let's go through them. First of all, cannot block. Well, that 4 days disproved that. So many people lost their access to the top 800 porn websites in the world, Pornhub, etc. So many people. That's why it created such a media storm. If you couldn't block and people could get around it so easily, there wouldn't have been such a protest against it. It wasn't just that they were concerned about the government interfering with the internet. The government has to intervene with everything. We are civilized. This is the word you have to use in law colleges. We are civilized. That means everything is legislated. How you drive on the road is not your personal choice because it affects other people. How you behave sexually is not your personal choice because of sexually transmitted diseases and promiscuity. It affects millions of people, and it affects millions of girls who are kidnapped to produce this often child pornography and human trafficking. So how about the freedom of the girls? How about the freedom of the girls that are kidnapped, you know? How about the status of women if all the guys are watching naked women all the time? You know, why aren't the ladies all against these things? We can block it. You see, these laptops here that I'm using today are 2 to 4 gigahertz. That means they do approximately 3 billion calculations per second. Yes, there are 20 million or 2 crore estimated pornographic web pages in the world, 20 million. That seems, how can we block them all? Well, remember the computer can do 3 billion or 3,000 million calculations per second. Where's 20 million porn websites or pages? Where's 3,000 million calculations per second in a latest computer? It can be blocked. It is very easy. The government block all the terrorist sites. I went to see the Commissioner of Police, the Cyber Commissioner of Police in Bangalore, the head of the cyber crimes for Karnataka, the state. I got an appointment with him, and he said, I agree with you. However, we are so busy with terrorist sites and with corruption sites that we can't get into all these 20 million, testing these 20 million pornographic sites. So we need a separate branch of cyber police. This is what the law should come, a separate branch of cyber police, which is run by ladies. Now, this is not sexist, it's realistic. You know, it is not sexist to say that this maternity ward is only for ladies. That's realistic because only ladies can have babies. Men can't give birth to a child. So, this is a very wise thing to do, that the women should run this so they're not tempted by it. Plus we can get software today. We don't need any humans, we can use software. Statistically, women are far less addicted to porn than men. And secondly, a lady watching a naked lady isn't a problem. It's just like a medical diagram, okay? So I think the ladies can test these things when they're debatable more. Plus, they will have hopefully more empathy with the girls being kidnapped, and that's what we see, that ladies understand these issues much more. Once a guy is addicted to porn, his conscience is marred. He no longer understands these things properly, and therefore he will be twisted in his imagination and he won't be responsible. I did a government meeting. 8 people, 7 members of the Rajya Sabha came down to Hyderabad, where I was invited. The United Nations were there, the DGP of police, top police officer for the state of Andhra Pradesh or Telangana, the Inspector General of Telangana was there, and the Inspector General introduced me. Everyone spoke for a few minutes. I spoke for 22 minutes, not very well. Working at a national level, I realised we need much more prayer support when we go to a national level. The level of spiritual warfare is so much higher. I only spoke for 20 minutes. Can you believe I only spoke for 20 minutes? But anyway, I spoke for 20 minutes against porn, and they spent the rest of the time discussing how they're going to block it. And then after our press meet with 14 TV channels, they did the block of 853 websites. Praise God. I forgot what I was saying there. I forgot what point I was going to about changing the law. Yeah, you can say it out loud.
MPs came in and told you were saying that women versus men.
Yes, thank you. So after all these MLAs or MPs from Rajya Sabha, thank you, Linik, they were all male, and one of them I was chatting to afterwards, and he started laughing and saying, "Hey, everyone knows porn is great. We just have to make it less accessible so that children don't watch it." And he was the guy in charge of blocking it, and he's laughing, and he's obviously addicted to porn. So that's why ladies should be in charge of these things. Men have disqualified themselves because of the en masse abuse. They are disqualified to be the main vehicle to decide these things. It's not going to fully solve it. Girls can be corrupt, they can take bribes from men, but it's going to help a lot more. It's going to be much harder. It's not sexist, it's realistic, it's safe, it's absolutely right. Okay, legally, anything else about porn that you can think of? That was the press meet with the 14 TV cameras. That was the papers the next day. It was in Coimbatore. Hello, Johanna and Simon. And even then some of the national papers of the whole South India, the Hindu Indian Express, came up with the press meet. That was the press meet which inspired the Rajya Sabha meeting. This was in Hyderabad before, and we actually had a divine revelation to get there, and that's another story. Any questions about porn and law? Okay, let's go to the third subject. Of course, you give a summary quickly, all your normal points of porn as well. Okay, so the next one is liberalising the divorce laws. This has not yet happened in India, and in a law college we need to mention it. Basically, it's a little hard. The law is on the side of the marriage, or every contract or covenant, the law is on the side of. In Western countries, except marriage. Whoever is trying to break the marriage, the law is more on their side. It's very easy to get out of a marriage contract in the Western countries. In India, it has to go through a court case. There's a restriction. Why? To protect the children. Because India recognized the sacred value of a family that gives a mum and a dad to the children. In the Western countries, they've completely thrown this out, and they just see the convenience of the parents and if there's any arguing. Okay, now they don't tell you that when they have a divorce and go with someone else, they have arguing there as well. And they don't say about all the consequences on the children. Yes, we need to protect women from abusive relationships, and to protect their life, we need a divorce law. You know, it's in the Bible. It's the last resort, not the first resort. So whenever we're discussing liberalising the divorce laws, I'll say this in the law college, remember the children, and then give all the normal statistics that porn leads to divorce. People are dissatisfied with their wives, and so porn decreases the sexual attraction, and therefore increases the possibility of divorce. People want to watch porn in the night rather than sleep with their wife. It leads to divorce, and it's the children that suffer. And we know the statistics. You probably can't read this. So in a divorced home, the boys are 4 times more likely to become a rapist when dad's coming once a month or once a week, and the children are 5 times more likely to commit suicide when they live in a broken home where it's a stepdad or no dad. Dad comes occasionally, mum goes to work, so no one's there to invigilate them when they come home from school for 2 hours. They mix with the worst elements of society, the street, older children. They get into bad habits, which is not right, and they start the bad habits at a younger age. And so even Liberal President Obama quoted these statistics before his first election campaign. That doesn't prove it's true, it's just he's against the ban of porn, so even he quoted these. This is well documented, the terrible consequences on society when you decimate families. A nation is made of a building block, which is called a family unit. As bad as some families are, it's better than no family for the children. So we have to remember this. Children from fatherless or non-natural marriage couples, these are all the consequences. 6 times more likely that the children become long-term in prison, 7 times more likely to leave their education system, to get pregnant as a teenager, to run away from their home, to commit murder. Actually, 24 times more likely to run away from home. So we can talk about that. Any questions on divorce and law? Okay, let's move on to the Criminal Amendment Act, which happened in 2013 concerning rape, IPC section 375. So any girl, even with consent, under 18, that has sex, even with consent, even if she agrees with the guy, it's counted as rape now. So even if the girl agrees, the guy can be put in prison for 7 years by rape. It's not only age, it's also penetration. Not only vaginal rape, but also anal or oral rape. Any penetration is counted as rape today. Even above 18, the definition of intercourse for rape is changed to any one of the 3 methods of penetration. Basically, because of the Nirbhaya rape case was so violent, they thought if we increase the sentence, and right now they're considering it's now 20 years if they're killed, or if it's a gang rape, it's 20 years in jail, or if they're physically handicapped. And they're now thinking of making the death sentence for any person that's raped who's under a certain age, like 12. I believe that they're considering the Supreme Court at the moment as of April 2018. Some people say it's decided in the Supreme Court, but it's not a Supreme Court issue, it's a government issue, so the Supreme Court can't decide that. It has to be the government to change the law. Okay, so now the thing is when someone goes to rape a girl, he's not thinking, is it worth 20 years in prison? He's thinking he's not going to get caught, and most rapists don't get caught. So just increasing the sentence, whilst we honour that, it's not enough. Certainly these should not be twisted and used. Someone could say, give to the doctor's report, yes, his seed is inside my daughter's body. Proof that DNA test of the seed inside cells inside the body, and therefore he's a rapist. It can be misused, so we have to be careful that we don't go too far in just making the sentence worse and worse and worse. It can be misused. We need checks and balances. When I first came to India, someone said, if someone says you've raped a girl, cut him with me too, you're finished. So it put a fear on me. It can't be that. There must be a legal system, They said, don't be alone with girls. Well, that's a good advice. Don't be alone with girls for many reasons. But I think we need to have checks and balances. But anyway, another reason why they did this Criminal Amendment Act was because rape is so increasing. It's so well documented that rape's increasing. Now the question is, why is rape increasing and what's the real cause? Well, if it's not that we're advertising it through violent pornography, what is it? Again, we're looking at the law, and then we're going to all our normal points about rape porn, violent porn. Okay, and we can talk about sexual immorality and marriage and AIDS. Okay. 69% of students, it's a debatable thing today, does watching rape increase the chance of becoming a rapist? And 69% of the youths that we interviewed said yes, they believe that it does increase the chances, and not only increase the chance, 69% said they believe that it inspires, 69% said it inspires the desire. See, rape is not just because you don't have anyone to sleep with. You can get, rather than raping, go and steal 100 rupees, 500 rupees and go to a prostitute. So that's a much less crime if it's just about sex. It's not just about sex. It's not just about male dominance. It's about the actual girl screaming. Violent porn advertises not making love but making hate. That's why there's a link between violent pornography and the inspiration of rape, because people actually want the girl actually screaming. It's more exciting. It's very shameful that the recent young girl that was repeatedly raped and that died, the 8-year-old girl, her name was Asifa. This is April 2018, India. That so many requests are reported for the videos of what happened in India. And okay. So we need to block, rather than all these amendments are good, but we talk about the blocking the violent pornography. Now, the child porn has, okay, we talk about that later. The law has been changed a little bit, or they're implementing the law, but the violent porn, they need to get a law that blocks it, makes it fully illegal for any internet service provider, ISP, to provide. So we took all our normal points about this. Any questions on rape, violent pornography, and the law? Okay, the next one is very important, and recently we were in a meeting with the government to get some funding for against human trafficking. And they asked one question: what is the POCSO? And none of my team could answer. He said, your NGO is not in touch. And it was a good rebuke. And they had a 5 lakhs of, not 5 lakhs, something, 1 lakh or 3 lakh sponsorship. No, it wasn't 3 lakhs. I can't remember what it was. It was about a 1 lakh sponsorship for the Ujwala program for doing anti-trafficking work. But our team, when they went to get the sponsorship, were asked, what is POCSO? Now, what is POCSO? Prevention of Child Sexual Offences Act. Prevention of Child Sexual Offences, or Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2011. Notice all these laws are very recent. The graph I showed you at the beginning, all these things, it's not just being reported law. It's all these, we've had the TV for decades now. But in the last 10 years, we've had so many changes of law because all these things are increasing because of the increased advertisement of sexual harassment, paedophile through child porn, rape through violent porn. So when we go to a law college, we point out that all these new laws, why? Yes, we're responsible, but we've had responsibility since independence. We've had debates and television programs. Why now? Because it's increasing. It's well documented. Look at the papers, it's more increasing. There may be other reasons as well, but the number one reason is because it's increasing. Now, if someone under 18 is sexually abused, touched inappropriately or raped, vaginal, anal or oral, it doesn't just come under rape, it will come under this part of the law, POCSO, rather than the IPC sections. It's more strict. There's more. They recognise that child abuse and child rape is massively increasing, so we need a special law to deal with it. How we deal with the, I don't know all the details of this at all, but we can talk about the background. If you just mention POCSO 2011 and then you go into child porn, human trafficking, child abuse, etc. Okay, so especially child porn, I'll talk about after this. Now, according to our research of 5,800 students, 48% regularly watch child porn. We don't call it child porn, we call it teen porn because that's what it is. They don't usually watch primary school girls, it's usually 15, 16, 17-year-olds, 14-year-olds. So that's 6 million in South India. Now, we've got a law to stop child abuse, but 6 million students alone are accessing, are requesting, are searching for child porn every day in South India. Don't you think if we've got a law showing how much we are getting abuse of teenage girls, don't you think we should stop advertising it? 6 million, just apart from all the older guys, we've got 6 million 16 to 21-year-olds accessing this every day. So we're in the law college, we say we need to block child pornography. Now, we can talk a little bit more about POCSO. I need to learn a little bit more about it. It's how it's reported, how you look after the children, it's how they deal with the court case. It's very good. But that's not our main aim. Our aim is let's deal with the roots. And that's the whole thing. In your law college, we're saying let's deal with the roots of these things. And we're talking about cyber ethics, bringing it into the classroom to talk about, we said this should be coming to the syllabus. We don't want whenever we talk about syllabus change, like a record, we repeatedly say we do not want sex education. Sex education is the Western version. It advertises abortion and contraception as the solution. We want traditional Indian cyber ethics and pregnancy ethics, relationship ethics. This does not give the biology. It does not advertise as contraception. It points out how unreliable they are. It tells how bad abortion is rather than saying you can have an abortion. You know, it speaks against promiscuity. It deals with the roots. Most of you know when we were in the early years in 2012 in Rescue, we did a college in Nanjangud where the principal said for 7 years he stopped being a principal of a +1/+2 college and or high secondary school, and he did Hillary Clinton's anti-AIDS program for lorry drivers. And he said all they talked about was contraception. He said it had the opposite effect. Those that weren't were encouraged into promiscuity because it's safe sex. Oh, I'm not going to get AIDS. It's safe sex. What we in Indian traditional values, we warn about AIDS and therefore say no sex before marriage. It's a realistic goal in India. And we want Indian traditional values, cyber ethics, pregnancy ethics, youth relationship ethics taught at PUC colleges and degree colleges. It's going to be hard to get this into high schools. Let's start at the college level. It's not been an issue. It's only in the remote villages where some of the lecturers say, oh, we're embarrassed about this, isn't it? As you know. In most of the places, yes, we need this. They understand that we need this today. In a law college, you know, we need to change the law. We need to make this mandatory that this is taught in the schools against this child porn, and explain to the students how they produce child porn. They kidnap, abduct the girls, they rape them, they torture them. They are prisoners, they're locked up. Only visitors is rapists. They get raped 7 times a day or gang raped 300 times a year. They have thousands of gang rapes until they die of a sexually transmitted disease or while trying to escape. This is what happens to produce this child pornography. Okay. They suffer. Someone suffers. Now, I will mention this briefly. Rather than doing my moral marks card, which you can see on the Seeds of the Gospel video, I will do the judge's dilemma at this point, which is where I will explain the difference between a judge and a lawyer. The defense lawyer stands with the guilty party pleading for mercy or trying to prove him innocent in a debatable case, whereas the judge has the responsibility to sentence him if he is guilty. Okay, so we can look at this simplistically and say that let's say the judge is the father of the accused. As a father, he wants his daughter, who has robbed somewhere, not to have her hands cut off or to be sentenced to jail for a long time. However, the judge has to bring justice. Now, even if the person is guilty, there's the two sides, isn't there? So, how about God? God is the judge of the universe, I say in every law college. And God is also the defense lawyer because we are all his children. So what does he do? Does he punish us or does he acquit us? Does he stand for justice or for mercy? And I explained that in India, the solution to this is that at every festival, though not everyone agrees with this, they take a chicken or a lamb and they will sacrifice it. And they'll say, God bless me, and put your wrath on the animal. Or in our Christian terms, put the judgment on the animal and the wrath, but not the fleshy anger. We don't believe in fleshy anger. God doesn't have that sort of anger. But anyway, it's still the same principle. It's the cross principle of an animal sacrifice, even though they mix up God's irrational anger, which the true God does not have. And so in the law college, rather than doing the Mark's card parable, I would just talk about the judge's dilemma. On one side, it's his daughter who's guilty. On the other side, he's the judge, he's responsible for justice. So the only solution is sacrifice. And if we compare our legal system with the religious system, we see a slight contradiction. Because whereas we will believe that God would accept a chicken to give us blessings, or a lamb, certainly in the Old Testament we see that all the time. If you go to a court situation that says, okay, I'm proven guilty, I've got to go to prison for 10 years for running over that girl, driving at 120, she died, so please take this chicken and put it in Mysore jail, or sacrifice it, or 10 chickens, or 10 lambs. No court system would accept it. So whereas the animal is a good symbol of a sacrifice, of a true principle, but in the actual court system, it would be unacceptable as a substitute. However, in the court system, if an identical twin does that sentence for his twin brother without anyone knowing, and he finishes the sentence, and then it comes out that he's done the sentence voluntarily, or he's finished the sentence, they cannot then judge the twin brother, who was the guilty party, because it's already been served. The punishment has gone. Not a lamb substitute, but a human substitute. So perhaps the only sacrifice big enough, and then I will use all the examples of sins of what we're talking about, the only sacrifice big enough for all the rapes that are being watched, all the 16 million per year babies that are being wiped out, all the millions of gang rapes per day in the brothels, the only sacrifice big enough would be perhaps the life of God himself, taken so that he could show mercy on people. So that's how I do that, because also I won't have time to do these things. Okay, let's get on to any questions on child porn and POCSO. I don't know much about POCSO.
Regarding the last point that you said, that another person can take the judgment, you said identical twin. Should it be an identical twin? It can't be another person?
No, the reason why I used identical twin is because in the human courts, they wouldn't know the difference. They wouldn't know. Otherwise, they wouldn't accept it, would they? If it was me and him, they wouldn't accept him to go to jail. If it's an identical twin, they wouldn't know. And when they found out, it's too late. He's done his 5 years sentence. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to Immoral Trafficking Act suppression and Immoral Trafficking Act prevention. This was 1956 and 1986. Immoral Trafficking Act basically speaks about prostitution, and it slightly really covers human trafficking, because that is concerned with prostitution as well. And by the way, Revelations chapters 18 and 19 talks about the great whore. The whole end time strategy of the devil in the end times is described as being a prostitute. So it's no surprise to us that we see prostitution escalating, and it's something that's exposed as evil in the scriptures themselves. We have to be fighting against it. Human trafficking, prostitution. Some people argue that if we don't have prostitution, we'll have more rape. Listen carefully. I get this in all law colleges. If we don't have prostitution, we'll have more rape. The answer for man's sexual desire to stop rape is marriage, and healthy marriages, not prostitution and not pornography. The antithesis of rape is not prostitution or pornography, it is healthy marriages. Okay, but people say, well, that's unrealistic. But anyway, prostitution breaks more marriages than it solves. It makes people dissatisfied with their wife. One time doing it with a 16-year-old rather than their ugly 55-year-old wife. I mean, the beauty comes from the heart, so she's not ugly, but relatively, compared to that 16-year-old gorgeous girl in the brothel, his wife is now, he sees her as very unattractive. So the guy goes to Thailand for sex tourism. He sleeps every year he goes. The rest of the year he's bored with his wife. And it's actually more destructive, that prostitution. It's not an answer to anything. So we don't want to legalise it. It's causing more divorce and the breakdown of families. Okay, Now, Immoral Trafficking Act, so is against prostitution. There's two forms, suppression and then prevention. It's just an update 30 years later. And it was to replace the IP section 370, no prostitution. Basically, they legalized private prostitution, but made the law stricter about public prostitution. So, prostitution is illegal in India by these acts. The exception is what we call private prostitution. This means that if there's a girl who a guy starts flirting with her in a company, she can say, I see you want to sleep with me. He'll say, yes, I do. She'll say, I don't want to be your boyfriend, I'm sorry. He says, well, if I give you 2,000 rupees, she says, yes, that's not illegal. That's the only prostitution which is allowed, personal. So it cannot be advertised anywhere, like on the net. It cannot be a pimp that sells that girl's body. It cannot be a brothel where it's organised as a business. That's fully illegal. So what we normally call as prostitution is totally illegal. Only personal prostitution is legal. The law students will try and twist it. No, prostitution is legal. No, it's not. Public prostitution, which is what we normally call prostitution, is totally illegal. In the CETA and PETA, or actually it's ITAS and ITAP, Immoral Trafficking Act, Prevention Immoral Trafficking Act, Suppression, they legalised the private ones. So, and there's lots of sentences to that. Now, when we talk about this, according to our research, 24% of undergraduate guys they pay for sex. This spreads sexually transmitted diseases. It's not just one person. They go, but each time they go once a month, that means they are using, in their 3 years at college, they're using 30, 40 different girls. Promiscuity is one thing, one girlfriend, maybe two. But prostitution multiplies promiscuity. Guys that go every week, they will use 50 different girls per year, 150 girls. This is where AIDS and these other deadly things are spread. So we cannot allow prostitution. We don't want to legalise prostitution because of AIDS, because it multiplies the chances. It's not safe sex. Safe sex is with one lifetime sleeping partner, committed marriage. Okay, 84% of the guys who were watching porn said that it was progressive, which means that after watching soft porn, they go to hard porn. After videos and photos, they want violent porn, child porn, younger and younger, homosexual porn, gay porn, more perverted. Then they said the next area in progression, 84% of the experts are saying, and remember only 84% are watching, approximately, so all those that watch basically say unanimously it leads them to want to try it out. So more promiscuity with their girlfriend, or if their girlfriend doesn't agree or they don't have a girlfriend, they go towards prostitution. Okay, these guys are 18, 19, 20, 21. Guys generally want a girl younger than them. This is promoting human trafficking and the trafficking and abduction of young girls. 52% of guys who are on soft porn at PUC end up on hardcore porn by the time they're in degree, according to the student survey in, I think it was 300 colleges. So, in other words, this is soft drugs to hard drugs is nothing like this. It's so much lower. Okay, but even then, soft drugs are illegal. So since the link from soft porn to hard porn is so much more proved, so much more likely, how much more should we criminalise soft porn, even if it's not rape and child? Because it has a higher link, such a high link to those things which obviously advertise. Now guys say watching child porn and what doesn't make you a paedophile, and watching rape porn doesn't make you a rapist. Sometimes yes, but since there is such a high level from the increase in this violent porn to the increase in all these activities, the link is undeniable. However, people do deny it. They do deny the link, and certainly some people maybe can watch this and not do abuse, not have their tastes changed. But you look at so many ex-porn addicts, they all say that watching porn decreases my level of age that I expect in my sexual activity. That's their testimony. And, this is what 84% of the guys say. So, we can give the example of the corporate world. They spend lots on advertising, adverts work. What you watch in excited state does influence your choices. When you watch a rape scene, you go to a park drunk, your friends are jumping on a girl, you participate. You've watched it 100 times, but it's not 100 times, it's 10,000 times they're watching rape. This doesn't affect their psychology? Come on. On average, according to our research, 33% of college boys, PUC included, watch 14 to 17 rapes per week. That's 60 rapes per month. That's 600 rapes per year. That's thousands of rapes. 4,000 rapes while they're in their college life itself. Are you telling me that after watching 4,000 rapes and enjoying that girl, it's not going to change their conscience? It's not going to desensitize them to the horror of rape. That's what it does. So when they have the chance, because someone else is, and they're so sexualized by all this violent porn and disgusting pornography, that they actually go into a rape. Okay, any questions about prostitution and the law?
Not directly related to prostitution, but if it's average 5 hours of pornography per week, right?
Yes.
Then how is it 14?
Because each one is each BF is about 3 minutes. It can be 30 seconds to 5 minutes. Okay, so if it's 1 minute, and you have 60 times 5, 300 clips. So it's not 1 minute; it's more 5 minutes. So it's about maybe 60 clips per week, and so to have 15 is a quarter of what they watch is this violent porn. And according to them, the majority of porn websites have violent porn. Good question. So then we talk in our normal way about human trafficking, etc. Human trafficking is 1.2 million gang rapes per day in India. That's what, according to National Crimes Record Bureau, National Human Rights Commission, BBA reports, and former head of CBI Ashwani Kumar. The average of those is there are approximately 1.2 million child trafficked, forced girls in sex slavery. That's high school girls basically in sex slavery today. Okay, 1.2 million. Each one has 7 customers according to the National Human Rights Commission, and which is gang rape. They're not making love to these guys. They are abused. It is against their will. It is rape. 7 a day means it's a gang rape. So that's what human trafficking is. Okay, and they are, in many countries, they are updating the Immoral Trafficking Acts again to include human trafficking. So there is something in there about it because it is prostitution, but they're updating it. They're updating it to make sure the traffickers and the Johns are punished. So if you actually go in and use a girl, here, under these, the guy using the girl is not at fault. It's the traffickers that have abducted or illegal prostitution. The police generally don't work against prostitution, but they work against child prostitution, a 17, 16, 15-year-old girl or younger. They should work against all prostitution. We should remind them of these laws when we go in and talk to the police inspectors in their training, which we've done once. The same people who espouse total freedom in their choice of sexual partners and genders are the most vocal voices of shock and outrage at the numbers of AIDS orphans and child sex slaves in the world. They are blind to their own hypocrisy and denying the fact that the very freedoms and lifestyles they espouse are a primary cause of the things they are outraged about. For a higher college where their English is really good, I'll read out that quote. When they're very liberal, they're very progressive, they're very promiscuous, and it's such a hypocrisy that they want sexual freedom, they want more prostitution, but they're outraged about all the AIDS orphans and the trafficked girls, but what they're promoting is the primary reason for the increase in these two terrible things. I'll try and speak slower every time I look at you. We can talk about protests about these things. I don't need to go. Okay, let's move on to I think this is the last area, or two more areas of the law. So this is IPC section 377. The history is that the High Court in Delhi changed the law in around 2009 to allow homosexual marriage. However, the Supreme Court in 2014 overruled the High Court in Delhi, saying you have no right to change the law, only the politicians can. Okay, that was the main ruling. But also they introduced, like the Alliance of Defence of Freedom, good going guys, and others, they used the opportunity to bring up all the problems with legalising homosexuality, and it's still a massively debated thing. And so we absolutely have to explain in law colleges why we shouldn't legalise homosexuality. So that's our foundation, our introduction, and then we go through all the arguments on it, okay? So we talk about all the normal things. This was our press meet in 2016. We were in Bangalore, and we did a press meet on, for the first time, we talked for half an hour about homosexuality in the press, and it came in some of the newspapers the next day. Whilst through the first half hour, they asked many questions. Our press meet lasted an hour and a half. We were told we could only have 20 minutes. But in the last half hour talking about homosexuality, they were totally silent. They said, we're shocked, we've never heard this before. The people in the media only hear constantly that we should accept the homosexuals and the transgenders. They never hear the medical facts. They never hear the implications on society, implications on children. They never hear what's going on now in the Western countries. You know, in Western countries, by the age of 15, they're cutting off guys' sexual organs if he says, I feel like I'm a girl. I know loads of girls when they were young that were tomboys. Basically, they went through a little temporary stage. 75 to 95% of tom girls and guys that feel effeminate when they're in their teenage or young childhood naturally come out of it. But in the West now, they're cutting off their girls' sexual external organs. If they're girls, they're cutting off the boys' external organs. If they're a boy, and they're saying they're transgendered. Now, when they changed that, the suicide rates before and after are exactly the same, the surgery, but they're mutilating people's bodies in the name of let's accept them as they are when they're children. And they're not old enough to make these decisions, and very often it's reversible, it's just in their mind very, very easily. Apart from the fact that it is a mental delusion, that they are the opposite sexual identity to their physical gender. It's a mental delusion. So we talked about this, and this is a law that we've got to fight. Unfortunately, most people are ignoring this, and unless people get involved in these issues, this will change in India, it's changing the rest of the world, and especially if Congress get in. We want Congress to get in, but we don't want them to legalise homosexuality. And it's becoming a political issue. We need to campaign now. We will vote for you, but not if you legalise anal sex. Homosexuality is anal sex, that's what we're talking about. And I'm not going to go through the 14 years less living, Oxford Journal of Epidemiology. I'm not going to go through 140 times less Centre of Disease Control, America, 140 times more chances of getting AIDS, syphilis and other sexually transmitted disease, 24 times more likely to be a paedophile, and therefore they can't legalise homosexual marriage because they are 24 times more likely to abuse those children. If we legalise it, they can adopt children. If we keep it illegal, they can't adopt children, so those children are safe. We wouldn't employ terrorists. We wouldn't call terrorists to babysit for our children. So we shouldn't legalise or give the opportunity for a group of people who have 24 times, 2,400% more chances of being a paedophile, which means abuse. They want to sexually attracted children to adopt someone else's children. How many cases have we seen? They adopt and they sexually abuse. Not all, but 2,400% more. Where do I get these statistics from? In America, we have, on average, an average homosexual by his own confession, has 50 times the chances, has 50 lifetime sleeping partners. Unfortunately, many of them are children, and 33% of this child abuse is homosexual in nature. That is man to boy. Whereas only 2 to 2.5% of Americans or American men are homosexual. By simple high school ratio, we get the fact from that it is 24 times more likely for a homosexual to become a paedophile. Therefore, we cannot allow homosexual men to adopt children. It's unsafe for the children. Therefore, we cannot allow homosexuals to marry. And for many other reasons as well. But this is how we can argue it in a law college. Okay, we can talk about the fact that 90% of Bangalore students said that watching porn, watching anal sex porn, which is so common now, heterosexual and homosexual. Homosexual is only anal or oral, there's no other option, because neither of the men have that part that the lady has. So watching that sort of pornography inspires them actually to try out anal or oral sex. Whether heterosexual or homosexual is irrelevant. So again, that's the link. According to them, 52% of pornographic websites have homosexual porn, which is like two ladies doing it. It's the second to favourite pornography for students, two lesbians. First is teen porn, then is lesbian porn, even before rape porn. 56% of the websites have oral porn, according to the experts, which is the metropolitan city youths. Now, in 1990, the head of American Psychology Institute, who helped to decriminalize, or he declassified homosexuality as a mental disorder, to the cheers of the LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community, was the same guy who in the early 2000s documented many highly motivated homosexuals or gays who through reorientation therapy reversed their sexual orientation. If you didn't understand that, just replay that part of the video. And I encourage you, some of these things, to frame the sentence, you may like to hear a few times. So if you didn't catch it, re-listen to it and write it down. And he did this, documenting that people can change, to the horror of the LGBT. But he was an unbiased guy. He was the very head of the American Psychology Department who declassified homosexuality as a psychological disease, which led to a change in the world. He said homosexuality is not from birth, people can change. If they can change, it's not genetic or epigenetic. Okay, any questions on homosexuality and law? Okay, so let's go on to the last thing. Long court cases in India. Okay, now, and corruption. So, first, corruption. If we're standing against crime and we ourselves are corrupt as a lawyer, a barrister or a judge, we are a hypocrite and we will stand the consequences in eternity forever and ever. God will judge a lawyer stricter because he knows the law better. He's not ignorant, and his whole life is about prosecuting criminals. How can he himself be a criminal? It's just like police. They have tougher sentences. Or they should be held more responsible. Just like in the Bible it says, not all of you should be teachers, that they will be judged more strictly. James 2:1 or 3:1. Okay, so that's one thing. But the second thing is long court cases. Every law college teaches this. It's better that some criminals are not prosecuted and get away than an innocent person is put in jail. Highest priority is the innocent should be protected. So if someone doesn't turn up for the court, they will wait until he comes, even if it's 3 years. So because of this overprotection of the innocent, the court cases are so extended. In England, if you don't show up for a court case, you are fined. It's a criminal offence. Okay, or it is an offence. And so if you're called for a court, you're like, oh my goodness, I have to go. I have to drop everything. It's a top thing. Because delayed justice is injustice. Something like 80%, 85% of all court cases do not end in sentencing or someone going to jail. Now let's say 50% are innocent, but still so many are getting away with it. Why? Because after their daughter's terminated, for 3 years the father will be, I want to put this guy in jail. After 7 years, give me 5 lakhs, I'll drop the case. He's lost it. Delayed justice inspires injustice. So it's not, we can have so many checks to make sure innocent people are not condemned, and actually more innocent people are condemned because that person, that guilty person escapes and he goes on to do more crime. So when he goes on to do more crime, more innocent people suffer. So when you think about the innocent people suffering by being sentenced, you've got to also consider the greater number of innocent people that suffer when a criminal is not convicted. When a criminal is not convicted, automatically innocent people will suffer, on average. So better a tiny number of innocent condemned than many guilty acquitted. Less innocent would suffer. So that means we want swifter sentencing. We want to change our legal system so that statistically, the best place to get saved is in prison. So as believers, we have no problem with people going to jail because there's so many college ministries, because the Bible says in Matthew 25, I was in jail and you visited me. So you have so many prison ministries. People in jail are more likely to hear the gospel in many places than people outside. So as Christians, we have no problem. We'll never have a 100% safe system. So in the name of not condemning the innocent, we don't want to let so many people out in justice. And if the innocent go to jail, they have great chance of hearing the gospel. So we have no problems with that. And Peter says, if you suffer and you're innocent, it pleases God. Not that we should want that, but it's acceptable. Jesus was innocent, he suffered. So the world hates the idea of innocent suffering, but that's not the truth. As Christians, we know that. Any questions about that? Okay, then I talk about our website. They can be a social media activist, our Facebook, parental software, our email address to get in touch with us. Thank you very much for listening to this session, and I hope you learned a lot of things, made notes. Please pause each video until it's pause each video if you don't catch a point, so you can write it down, so you can watch it slowly like the others, so you can train yourself to teach in law colleges, and the church can disciple the lawyers. So all the lawyers can end up pro-life, anti-porn, pro-marriage, pro-creation, not procreation, but pro-creation as opposed to evolution. We can talk about these issues, and in America we saw Donald Trump wanted to stop Muslim terrorists entering the country, so he invoked a law that had been invoked before. However, one judge stood against him. One judge said this is illegal, and it went up to a high court, and because the high court said this may be illegal and there has to be a court case, one judge who's not been elected, one lawyer, trumps the president's power. Lawyers are powerful. And what we've seen, the Christians have withdrawn from the legal side of a nation in the Western countries. We were told the rapture's any moment, so let's not go into the professions, journalism, doctors. We said we can be doctors, we can be school teachers, but we shouldn't be university professors, politicians, or lawyers, or journalists, or police officers. And when we withdraw from a battle, the vacuum is filled with darkness. So one last point on this. We need to encourage our believers to be lawyers, and to go into not just the cases of people coming for the family issues, but to go into these positions, barristers or whatever you call them here, that advise politicians, that are in the high courts, supreme courts. We should want our people there. Donald Trump delighted the Christians before the election. Maybe he changed the election to some degree. He said, if I am voted president, these are the guys I will put as Supreme Court justices in America. They're all pro-life. So the Christians said, we will vote for Donald Trump. He has promised. He's kept all his words so far. And lawyers have masses of power that can change the nation. We need to understand that even the law is one of the mountains of mass influence. It comes under government, we call it. Actually, it's a separate mountain in itself. And it's a mountain. Jesus said, let the light be on the lampstand. The city is on the hill or on the mountain. We need to have Christian lawyers. We need to have a vision. And Christians that go into law should have this vision to change the laws and impact the nation. Lawyers get invited to television programs. And we need to encourage the lawyers in the college to be social activists, to get into this side of the law. And even the unbelievers as well. Thank you very much. God bless you.